This is my presentation around my intended MIS pathway for next year. The pathway that I'm looking to choose is dissertation. It's independently led, so I have full control over the completion of it. It enables me to do it on a topic area of my choice, which will increase my self-interest and motivation levels, as I can do it around a topic that I'm passionate about and interested in. It follows a traditional structure, which I find easier to adhere to. It can help enhance my key skills such as problem solving, research and analytical skills, which are all essential for my future career. And I can make the study related to my intended career pathway, which is in sports sponsorship. So I can base the topic around sports sponsorship so I can get a better insight and knowledge around the industry that I'm looking to go into once I graduate. The working title for my study is An Investigation into the Effects a Team Sponsors Have on Fan Identification and Consumption of the Team. The aim for the dissertation is to critically evaluate the influence sponsors have on a fan's team identification and their consumption patterns of the team's products from the point of view of the supporters. The objectives are to investigate fans' opinions of different sponsors and compare them to one another, to gain an understanding of the main factors that determine a fan's team identification, to identify the factors that affect a fan's level of consumption of their team, and to compare the effect each sponsor has on fans' team identification and consumption levels. The key stakeholders within my dissertation would be the club that I'm doing it around, the sponsors of the club, and the customers, in this case, the fans of the club. The rationale for the study. The industry rationale for it, the study is valuable to organisations that are looking to become a sponsor for sports teams, and it's very valuable for sports teams that are seeking a sponsor, as they will both learn what they want from one another in order for the relationship to be successful and for fans to perceive it positively. The industry will also learn how sponsors positively and negatively affect clubs and what type of sponsors that sports clubs should be looking to seek in order to gain the best fan reaction. The industry will also learn. Furthermore, sports sponsorship is extremely valuable in today's industry, as many sponsorship deals are generating millions of pounds for sports clubs, and so it's a primary source of income for many sports teams. And so it's important that they get the sponsorship deal right and fans view it positively in order for it to last, and so they can get a sustained income from these sponsorship deals. A growing trend within sports sponsorship is that organisations are looking for ethical sponsors, or sponsors with a clean and public friendly background and a positive public perception, as that can reflect well on the club, rather than having a negative sponsor that's associated with producing their goods via sweatshops, which would then reflect badly on the club. So the academic rationale for the study, to understand sponsors' impact on fans and how fans perceive sponsors. Previous academic writing around this topic suggests that fans want sponsors to show an interest in their club and support the club's future and endeavours, and rather than just seek benefits from the club, fans want the sponsor to give back to the club as well, work and form a relationship between each other that benefits both, rather than the sponsor just looking to gain. They want the sponsor to help the club develop as well. Moving on to the literature review. The field of research is the fan behaviour, sponsorship management, customer management and sports marketing. There's several key authors that have produced and written on this topic, such as Olson, Parker and Fink, Hickman. These previous studies and authors have found out and suggest that negative sponsors, so sponsors with an unethical or with a bad public perception, do affect fans' consumption level of their teams. For example, many fans dislike gambling sponsors and loan sharks such as Wonga, as they believe they encourage bad habits such as a gambling addiction and can cause people to fall into debt. And so the previous studies suggest that if the fans believe that their club has a negative sponsor, then they see that their club is endorsing and supporting this negative sponsor. So therefore their consumption levels will drop, as they don't approve and agree with their club supporting and working with this negative sponsor. Previous studies have also found out and suggest that team identification isn't actually influenced by sponsors, as fans will always have a lifetime commitment to their chosen team, and so it'll never change. They will always be a supporter and a fan of their team. However, sponsors do impact fans' forthcomingness with their identification of their team. So if fans don't like their sponsor, there'll be less of if fans don't like the sponsor of their club, they'll be less open to admitting that they are the sponsor of the club, that they are a fan of the club, as they believe that they don't really want to be associated with the negative sponsor. And several ways that fans voice their opinions towards their club about the negative sponsor is through boycotts, banners and protests in and around stadiums. My study is hoping to contribute to this is to deepen the research into fan perspective towards sponsors. I'm looking to discover what fans look for in sponsors, so what they want, and learn the type of sponsors that fans like and dislike. And I'm looking to discover how and why sponsors impact fans' team identification and consumption. Furthermore, it will be UK-based research, as previous research is based around American sports teams. The gap in previous research is that there's limited findings on what fans actually want from the sponsors, and as well as the impact that good sponsors have on fans and the type of good sponsors that fans look for. Furthermore, there's a lack of statistics and figures in previous research, so new numbers around levels of fan identification and levels of consumption dropping or increasing. And other than that, I'm looking to build upon and confirm and support the findings by previous authors. Key studies that I've previously mentioned measure fan identification through observation, so seeing if fans wore accessories or something affiliated to the club. They measure consumption through studies, so asking studies and questionnaires through asking fans questions such as how often they consume their favourite team's games under certain sponsors. Previous studies also use secondary data on fan attendance and viewing figures to see if a certain sponsor caused a spike or a decrease in fan attendance at games or consumption of games. Moving on to the methodology. The research design is cross-sectional, so I'm going to examine a specific club's set of fans. I'm looking into them. I'm going to use a mixed method research, so quantitative and qualitative research. I'm going to use a mix of interviews, content analysis, so looking at social media and how fans behave on social media towards sponsors. I will observe fans' consumption identification levels as a result of the sponsors, so whether they're demonstrating or not, or whether they're actually going to games with certain sponsors, and also use surveys as well. I'll get both statistics and an explanation behind the statistics using a mixed method approach. I will use Qualtrics to develop and distribute the survey. Also, using both researches, quantitative and qualitative, helps to inform one another. And quantitative research is motivated by the researcher's concerns, whereas qualitative research captures the participant's voice. Both methods compensate for each other's limitations, so the quantitative strengths are the qualitative weaknesses and vice versa. Previous research in this field is more qualitative, so I know it's tried and tested and can work, and quantitative will therefore provide new insight, which make it more informed. Previous studies primarily use focus groups and interviews to gain more informative data. Observations, content analysis and open-ended surveys were also used in previous studies. Previous studies used action research qualitative approach as well as ethnography and grounded theory approaches, as they helped understand why fans behave the way they do. I will adopt similar approaches through the use of interviews, observations and content analysis to help me understand how and why fans behave and respond to sponsors like they do. I will use purposeful sampling for my qualitative research, as it uses the people that the research is about, and therefore the results are more related, as the people can answer it easier. It is time consuming, so the participants need to be worthwhile using qualitative research. Snowball, convenience and random sampling are less informed participants, so they'll struggle to answer the questions and they can be more biased. I will use snowball sampling for my quantitative research. It's time efficient and the majority of participants will meet the criteria. Purposeful is too time consuming for statistics, and random and convenient sampling don't genuinely represent the population and it's too difficult to do in practice. I will access the sample that will answer the research through match people against criteria of the aims and objectives of the research. So such looking for people that are fans with a favourite team and whether they like or dislike their sponsor. I'm hoping to perform 10 plus interviews, 5 or more observations / content analysis, and I'll create one survey and looking for 150 completed responses of the survey. The sample characteristics are people who support a football team preferably, attend or consume their team's games products regularly. It can be any gender and above 16 in age. The quantitative data will be analysed through SPSS to assess the relationships between variables. I will testing variables for frequencies and cross-tabulations that give numbers, percentages and compares frequencies. I will also test for descriptives, which will give means, medians, modes, standard deviations. I'll perform correlation analysis to measure the strength of association between two variables and the direction that the relationship is heading in. Previous studies have analysed correlations between the type of sponsor and fan consumption identification levels, so that's something I could look at around. I will test the significance. I will be testing significance to learn how often the relationship between variables occurs in the data set, so see if anything is really significant. I need to focus on that. The data will be in quantitative data will be displayed in graphs and charts. Discrete and ordinal scales will be used to measure the quantitative data, as discrete scales ensure that metric variables will only be integer and ordinal scales will ensure that categorical variables are ordered in categories, therefore making the data easier and clearer to measure and analyse. Both scales have been used in previous studies, so I know they work. The qualitative data will be transcribed word for word and will include unspoken communication such as body language and tone of voice, and it will then be coded. I will use thematic analysis to analyse the qualitative data to help identify common themes that come up repeatedly. It's effective when trying to find out people's views, opinions, knowledges and experience from the set of qualitative data. Thematic analysis will help me to achieve the aim and objective of the MIS, as it will identify fans' opinions towards sponsors and the experiences that affected their consumption and identification. I'll use triangulation to bring the different methods together to help prevent biases from either method occurring to make the results more balanced. It will therefore help each method's data to support one another, and it combines the different method results to help make them clearer and more easier to understand. Here are some references. Thank you very much.